Welcome everyone once again to Whiteland, Indiana as we get set for the second half of today's action for the Indy Karting Challenge. Doubleheader weekend continues here on Kart Chaser. I'm Justin Prince, alongside me is Ian Fisher as we get set for the second half of today's card. Today, for qualifying for the second half of the action, is the 206 Sportsman, the 206 Cadet, 206 Medium, 206 Junior, 206 Masters, and the KA Senior Masters. They are all due to hit the track in the second half of the day. Ian, great to be back with you as we get ready for the second half of today. Your thoughts as we get ready for qualifying?
Well, it's great to be back with you, Justin, after a little bit of a break. And what I'm really excited to see is the differences in the track and then also the differences between the classes. A little bit different than what we saw earlier. Saw some of the 206 classes earlier, but I'm really excited to see just the heavy dose of 206 we have coming to us this afternoon. I'm really excited to see if there's going to be any differences, if there's going to be any similarities to the racing that we saw earlier.
It's going to be an interesting time. It's currently the track in the midst of its preparations for the second half of the day. Again, it's going to be a busy time. Kid Kart Final just finished up. That's hence why we're currently in the midst of preparations. Get ready on the racetrack for today's festivities. So, talking about the class 206 Sportsman is due up first in a few moments. Includes a lot of familiar names in the sportsman class, including Dominic Gaddis, who leads that championship. That championship, 105 points difference. Danny O'Gara, who we've seen put up some dominating pace earlier. He's had some good pace the past two rounds here, Ian, is closing in quickly on the 257. And one good round, like he's had the past two over Gaddis, or one like earlier today in the morning card in those classes, and we might see O'Gara swallow that gap completely up.
Yeah, and if we saw a repeat of what we saw earlier today with O'Gara and, O'Gara and I can't forget the other name right now, but O'Gara and Gaddis. I apologize there. If we see a repeat of earlier between Gaddis and O'Gara, I think you're right. I think that gap will continue to shrink. So it's really important if you're Dominic Gaddis to not have a repeat of the first round, really get a good qualifying effort in. Get up front and then just not worry about it anymore. This is a brand new race, a brand new setting for you. Basically, just go out and try to do the best you can and try to stop the bleeding from that championship run.
So the karts now hit the racetrack and get themselves underway here. And we mentioned about seeing what the differences may be between the morning and afternoon karts here. What are you watching keeping an eye on the most for this qualifying session to start off the afternoon?
Well, again, I don't think we're going to see the hot laps right out of the gate. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get everybody warmed up, and then you'll start seeing the hot times go down. I do think you'll see a little bit more drafting than you did earlier. It's a little bit hotter out. We mentioned kind of a summer day atmosphere out there, so the hot air, less dense, the aerodynamics is going to make a little bit more of a difference here, but I really don't expect to see anything drastically different than what we saw earlier, but we'll see here. We got 5 minutes of qualifying.
See the double box of the various portions of the racetrack. Gaddis and O'Gara the first to get onto the racetrack for this session. Austin Taylor, Titus Roberts, Dalton Sears, Blake Martinez, William Feichtner, along with Kaysen Hendrickson, Mom Stoner, Chase Call, Jordan Lapham, along with Max Zeal, Nolan Wade, Miles Snetler, all on the racetrack, a part of this session. And the groupings are already prepared and grouped together here as they come into the drafting sections you see right now on screen, how they're approaching this second half of today. Already, the first time's coming across, Austin Taylor leads them off in the session, the 48-3s.
It's kind of indicative of what we're going to see right now. Even with the first lap, you can kind of see the field separating themselves into a couple different groups right now, just a couple of brackets of lap time. I do expect to see that to change from different drivers, like Blake Martinez, for example. I expect him to put down a faster lap time his second time around. But that being said, especially with all the karts you see we have in this class, it's going to be really, really important to get yourself up front. Track position is going to be even more vital. We saw earlier, and I believe it was the 206 heavy class in the heat race, just the turn one, a mix-up that everybody kind of had to deal with there. You want to avoid that. The best way to do it is to be out in front, even though it was the leader that time that kind of spun out, causing all the carnage. Usually, if you can be out in front of a majority of the karts, you have a better time out on the racetrack. So with the vast number of karts that we have out here, I think qualifying is going to be even more important.
O'Gara now to the top of the board. By the way, Gaddis up to third. Robertson Sears amongst the top five, surrounding Austin Taylor on that pylon at the moment. And teamwork makes the dream work, right? And we're seeing some teamwork now in this qualifying session you see in this front group.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it. The draft, I think, is going to be definitely more important as the day goes on, especially while the sun is up. When you see the sun maybe start to creep down towards the latter half of the day, I wouldn't expect to see that until very deep in our finals. You might start to see a little bit of a change there, but I think the track is going to continue to get warmer, even with the rubber laid down. The rubber in the heat tends to be a little bit more of a slick track condition, so not only are you not making as much speed in the corners because you're dealing with the slickness, but as I mentioned earlier, the air really makes a difference as well. So I think the draft is going to be that much more important. You see it there with some of the teams, although now that we mention it, coming out of the hairpin there, a little bit of a jostling for position there, but they get it lined back up.
In that jostling and a tussling, we'll see a bunch of swapping around. 13/1000 of a second for your top tides with about a minute and 36 seconds to go on the pylon here. Jordan Latham also up to 6. Martinez 7th. Stoner, Avalos, Hendricks in the top 10. Gaddis, he bumps his way to 2nd. O'Gara bumped back to 3rd.
Austin Taylor going to take the top time with that as well. And kind of mentioned about the getting back in line there. You really don't want to be side by side during any of your qualifying laps. It's just going to slow you down. So you want to try to at least file into those lines or make a pass quick and then get back in line as much as you can there. You kind of see they're going down the long straightaway. That driver kind of thought second there of going inside, even though they might have had the run. It's really important to just keep your momentum up and stay in line with the car in front of you and try to take advantage of that slipstream.
That's extremely important when it comes to today, absolutely. And now, as they have enough time for one more set of laps here, Gaddis swaps his way to the top. 4/1000ths the difference. The 257 still trying to pick up the draft off the 224 of Taylor, but it's Gaddis, O'Gara, Taylor that are all bunched together, who are all setting the tempo half a second up over the field.
We mentioned how important it would be for Dominic Gaddis to really go out there and have a strong qualifying effort, and Danny O'Gara is really not making it easy on him at all. You can see how close the interval is between almost all of our lap times, from about first back to almost 7th is within a second of each other. So very close lap times by everybody out on the racetrack, but very vital for Dominic Gaddis to get up here and get up front early, especially going into this heat race.
Checker flag waves. Who takes the pole? They staggered out. No changes amongst your top 3. Gaddis, O'Gara, Taylor. How they lined up. Titus Roberts stays in 4th. No, he gets dropped by Feichtiner, as several in the second pack have their fastest laps to close. Roberts in 5th. Sears, Stoner, Martinez, Lapham, Hendrickson. Your top 10 in session. Andrew Avalos just outside this top 10. 9/10 of a second difference, 1st to 10th. Also outside the top 10 grouping, Nolan Wade, Chase Call, Max Zeal, and Miles Snetler. One driver took part in the session, Dylan Thomas, with a late addition to the transponder, but didn't set any times. So you see the separation amongst the field. That front 3, though, is razor thin in terms of how close they were racing it out in the qualifying session. That may set the tone for the race itself.
Oh, absolutely. And I think really at that qualifying session, I mean, congratulations to Dominic. It definitely took some skill to get that top lap time. But at the same time, I think you could have taken any of those top 3 drivers and just throw them in a bingo, wheel and then pulled out a number. And that would have been your pole sitter, really. I think they're just that close that it happens to be who got that extra millimeter of draft basically going down the straightaway. So when it comes to race time, it could be any one of those 3, heck, even one of the top 4, I would say, have a chance of really making a mark.
So currently, getting the track prepared for the next grouping of drivers here, 206 Cadet. Coming up here for the Indy Karting Challenge here on Kart Chaser. Next grouping on the racetrack, 206 Cadet. And 206 Cadet this season has seen some dominating performances by one Regan Hodges. She enters this race day up by more than 400 should say, points up over Patrick McNeely, Brett Hastings, Christopher Heinzen, and then you have Simon Ellick, who put up some dominating performances as of late since joining the class in the past few rounds in the 5th spot. And we've seen earlier today, Hodges and Simon Ellick put on some intense battling in their morning sessions. We'll see what Hodges has to do after Hodges swept rounds 3 through 6 in this championship. One driver already off, having to regather before they get back on the racetrack. You see, that's where the track entry for these competitors can be.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, might as well get it out of the way on the warm-up lap coming in the qualifying, right? Get it out of the way early, and you got to think this is probably a little bit of a revenge race for Regan Hodges. Had a little bit of a bobble there in the lead during the feature race earlier today, and then just happened to lose it there. I think fell back to 3rd place, so still on the podium. But you mentioned it, sweeping the rounds, the domination that she's had this season. You got to imagine she's going out there trying to come back and win this round as well.
Hodges starts things off, by the way, by a second up on the pole. And now we'll see if this ends up setting the tone for the qualifying session or not for here today. So overall, though, you see a lot of these drivers preparing. A lot of these drivers race in multiple classes. What do you feel that experience can be like, knowing these drivers have multiple races throughout the day in multiple different classifications of karts, but also have the chance to separate themselves in the other class, so to speak?
Well, you have more track time is never going to hurt, so there's that. There's one thing. You always want to try to get as much seat time as you possibly can, and racing in multiple classes obviously allows you to do that. It makes it a lot easier too when it's all in the same place and you don't have to do as much traveling. So that's kind of the advantage that some of these drivers have here coming out to some of these events at the same time. It helps you because every step in your career, if you're going to be a race car driver, you're going to have to get into a different car. You're going to have to adjust. You're going to have to learn different quirks to each little car, little differences. So I think that helps you out early in karting, where there's enough similarity where you're used to it, but there's enough subtle differences as well where it starts to get your mind ready to adjusting to little things in the car and on the racetrack and how the car reacts to the racetrack itself. I don't think it's going to hurt. More seat time will never hurt. You can't really go out on a racetrack and someone can just be like, okay, brake here more or turn here a little bit better. It just basically comes from experience, and that's the only way to get better. So more seat time is never going to hurt you, Justin.
That I agree with, absolutely. Hodges, by the way, up 7/10 right now with under 2 minutes to go in the session. Heinzen, Fox, Maxwell, Simon Ellick, your top 5 as it runs. Others, like Simon Ellick, jumping up, in fact. That tightens up the interval down to just 3/10. Again, that's at the other side of the racetrack compared to where Reagan Hodges is running in her 33 kart. And right now, Hodges seeming very comfortable around this racetrack as they set things up for what will be probably 2 more laps to do the qualifying run here.
Well, and you asked me earlier, too, as well, what does the extra seat time do? Is it an advantage? Is it a disadvantage? You look at the top 2 drivers on the leaderboard, and it was the top 2 drivers we saw earlier battling it out. So it's just a testament right there to what the extra seat time can do. It just makes you more comfortable with the track, makes you more comfortable with the kart. Reagan Hodges, as you alluded to earlier, is very, very comfortable looking on the racetrack right now. And really, even though Simon Ellick is very close as far as lap time goes in qualifying, I'm interested to see as far as when racing actually breaks out how those two will either work together or work against each other against the rest of the field.
That's going to be the true testament when the race comes to be, or the race is, should say, with both the heat and the final later on in the afternoon. No improvements in the past little bit here. Hodges has dropped back by half a second on pace, and we have a crash. 2 karts have collided, the 27 and the 147, it looks like. That's Lily McInerney, who is amongst those in this incident. 27 will be Enzo Seiner, who had an issue, and that puts a checker flag on the session.
Looks like everybody's all right, too. Just got spun around, so maybe need a starter on the old engine, maybe killed the kart, or maybe just need to get a lift back to the pit area. But, you know, those things will happen sometimes. I will say karts are fun when they when you stall a bit. You can sometimes reach back there and get the string yourself, but it's really hard to get the right angle. Sometimes you just need someone to come over and give you a start again.
So the drivers look to finish up their qualifying runs as they may here. Diesel Maxwell jumps to 3rd. Christopher Heinzen stays in the 4th spot. Everyone else is complete. Hodges, Sabanelik, Maxwell, Heinzen, Fox, Ari Berger. Seiner involved in the incident. Grayson Waite just got shuffled back with Ryan Wheeler, should say. Kyle Hendrickson, Wyatt ends up in the 10th position. And Lily McInerney, should say, in 11th spot. So grouping number 2 qualifying complete. Drivers getting sorted out on the racetrack. Next up will be, for today's order, it will be the 206 medium for the next qualifying grouping. As we get set for that grouping here, some interesting session points so far. Already seen 1 incident. Everybody else keeping it clean. We'll see what happens here in the next qualifying group. That next qualifying group all set to go. Cleanup very short from that incident, it looks like. So we get set for 206 medium. So, 206 senior medium. How are things going in the mediums? Well, the mediums coming into today is a very close points battle within 150 points. Elijah Fox over Braden Johnson. Levi Wilbur, last round's winner, should say, jumped up to 3rd in the point standings with a good round. Evan Crocodile in 4th is just about 80 points ahead of Jared Howerton. Gage Justiano rounding out your top 6. So the session now rolls. Howerton is leading this grouping of cars today. Elijah Fox, Brian Johnson, Justiano, Howerton. Then you have Raider Santos, Brady Sappenfield, Nicholas Nostman, along with Braden Mayfield, Josh Piccioni, Braden Heber, and Brennan Lorink, should say, who are all a part of this grouping here today. Here, Ian.
And I think Jared Howerton's got to feel really confident after his last race where he fought his way into second position in the feature. You can see here he's with Elijah Fox, who won that feature that he finished second in. So we'll see if they work together here up to the front. Early lap times coming in. Elijah Fox and Jared Howerton are indeed at the top of your leaderboard right now in the 48-second range. And you can kind of see right there, Justin, they're working together, kind of using their draft to the advantage. Nobody else on the racetrack right now really has a drafting partner like those two do, and that's really going to help you out to try to set down some fast lap times here, get yourself some good track position, and then go battle in the heats.
Absolutely in this style of racing here today. So, Elijah Fox is the one who has that 48.346 on that timing sheet. Starts things off with a fast time. Jared Howerton on the second time around, able to go up 2/10 quicker. You see where the times for some of these drivers are starting to circulate. Braden Hebert, who showed some good speed earlier, just took the pole for now over Howerton by a couple 100s. We're expecting a lot of swapping here in this grouping, and we're seeing that already as you take a look at the names.
Yeah, even you look down the leaderboard as well, even some names there that we saw earlier. Braden Johnston comes to mind, Gage Justiano. So a lot of drivers in here that do have pace, so I really don't think we're done swapping the pole position just yet. So Braden Heber, we saw he was in that three-car battle with Jared Howerton as well. Now puts himself in pole position. Again, I think he did that without really the help of too much of a tow, as you see Elijah Fox go back to the leaderboard as they cross the stripe that time. We'll see if Heber can respond. He'll stay in the third position right now. I take that back. He goes back to the pole. So really, I think it's going to be a three-kart battle again between Heber, Fox, and Howerton like we saw earlier in the day. And we should clarify, too, there's two Howertons in here. So it's Jared Howerton. Yes.
Yes, you have Dylan also in this field here for these drivers. About less than 90 seconds to work with. Heber, Elijah Fox, we've seen great speed from earlier. And Jared Howerton, that top three. We'll see if there's any swap arounds at the stripe this time around. And it's kind of wild how the sunshine can really change the complexion of this racetrack. It is much more brighter, and even the corners themselves and the camera angles look different because of that brightness here. Braden Heber able to, that's time by, improve on his personal best in the 47.5s over Elijah Fox. And is visibility, you think, going to become a thing? Because you see how hazy it almost looks like with how bright it is here on this October day.
I think when the sun's right above you right now, it's not that big of a deal because it's right directly above you. The only thing is you might get a little bit of a glare on your readout, and if you're looking at that, that might hurt you a little bit, but that shouldn't affect you too much. I will say, though, where it probably will become somewhat of a factor, Justin, is as the sun starts to set, especially as we get into our feature races. I think at that point, if you have glare coming right into your face, that could be problematic if you're following another car and you can't really see what's in front of you and they make a move at the last second. That could be an issue. But right now where the sun is, I don't think it's too terrible. If anything, it lights the track up really nicely, and there's not a lot of shadows, as you can see, at least hanging across the racetrack, so it kind of helps with your braking points and things like that. But I do think you are right. I think the visibility will become an issue maybe later in the evening, but right now I think they're okay.
End of session already here. Coming up to the checker flag, will there be any improvements? Yes, Elijah Fox takes the pole for now. Jared Howerton, 24/100ths as well. Brandon Hebert, one of the drivers in the later grouping, did not improve, and Fox takes it in the final moments of qualifying over Howerton and Hebert.
I will give a little bit of a credit to Elijah Fox here, even though Heber and Jared Howerton can put up the fast lap times. I give a lot of credit to Elijah Fox. He seems to be one of the more smooth and consistent drivers that are out there, and not a lot of variance between his lap times. That's really important as well, because you can go out there and set a fast lap time, but it's about consistently putting down lap times near the top of the board and not having any fall off. And that's not to say that Jared Howerton and Brandon Heber are having any kind of fall off whatsoever, but I think that's why we saw Elijah Fox as dominant as he was in the race earlier today.
Seeing the group in the drivers, how they sorted out. It was Fox, Howerton, Heber again, the top three. Nussman, Sapfield, Howerton, Dylan Howerton, Santos, Johnson, all with Mayfield, Justiano, Piccioni, and Loring. How they sorted. Already our next group, sprinting onto the racetrack as quick as they can, 206 Junior. And this is an interesting one because some of these drivers have had some ups and downs this season. You've had 3 drivers make all the rounds so far. Lucian Laser leads the point standings without a win. A lot of the winners in this series, interestingly enough, Ian, have been part-timers.
Trying to do it Matt Kenseth style, I guess, just going off average track position, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being absolutely consistent. And if you are that consistent, Justin, eventually the cards are going to fall your way, the dice are going to fall your way, and you're going to end up on the top step of the podium. It's just a matter of time. So if you keep plugging away and you're consistent, as I saw maybe something fall off one of the carts there or pick up a little bit of debris, I don't know what that was. But if you stay consistent and you're up there in the podium positions, eventually it's going to fall your way and you'll get a win.
To wrap up how the discussion is for the rest of the drivers, also for the conversation for the championship, with just third place finishes to his name, Evan Patton. Yet to get a top podium is Colin Harden. We'll see if today's the day. Harden has had several fourth place finish runs. Gabriel Payne, who missed a round, but has won 3 times, including 2 heat races. He is currently 4th. Those drivers, 2nd through the 4th, are all within a couple points of each other in the standings. So, they zip around to qualify. Thomas Anthony led the opening laps over Lucian Laser. Gabriel Payne in the top 3 with Maxey and Ward, your top 5 currently. Right now, that 317 of Thomas Anthony, all to his very lonesome up at the very front of this field.
Yeah, not a lot of aero help in this pack that we're seeing. Not many drivers getting together and trying to form a train or anything like that. Just a lot of single car qualifying, trying to hit your line, hit your mark. Sometimes you want the help of the tow. Sometimes it hurts you, though, a little bit, Justin, because maybe the driver in front of you that you're really close to get that draft, they might make a slight mistake that you're not expecting, and then it slows your lap time down. So you can see a lot of these drivers in this qualifying session, at least with the exception of maybe 2 that you see right there, are choosing to go the slow kart qualifying route.
We'll see how that works out for these drivers over the next 3 minutes here. And, of course, you have to remember, these drivers get to do it again tomorrow. How does that factor into it's a double-header weekend where you're racing not only the Saturday but the Sunday? One of a couple times this season we get to do this.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? If you have a good day, you can definitely carry that momentum into tomorrow. If you have kind of a rough day, you kind of just want to go back to the hotel or maybe go back home and just go to sleep and kind of put it out of your mind and act like it never even happened and that tomorrow is the only race of the feature. So I think it's really important as a driver either way to have a short memory and kind of put it out of your mind and remember, hey, every single race opportunity, every single day I go to the track is a new opportunity to improve or a new opportunity to maybe win a race. So I think you carry what you can into it, but you don't try to overvalue what you did today and carry that into tomorrow.
Under 2 minutes to go. Thomas Anthony still setting personal bests up at the very front of the field. Others needing to gain another 2/10 to be able to get up there. And this train is looking to try and do that 5 strong in the choo-choo train.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned earlier single car qualifying, and I think some of these drivers that are forming up are starting to realize that single car qualifying, as far as lap time goes, isn't going to get it done. And it's really important, especially we mentioned at the top of our broadcast this morning, the long straightaways in this configuration are going to be vital to try to get a good toe down and get yourself into the corner with a lot of speed and then carry that off of the corner as well. That's what we've seen a lot in the passing zones is people have the speed to make that initial move, but then it slows them down enough coming off of the next corner where then they're immediately crossed over again. So it's going to be really important to try to manage all your momentum throughout the racetrack and not just go for one big move and use all of it there and then slow yourself down.
Parker Dunn able to move up to 6th spot in this grouping. Others like Patton still need to pick up a lot of time. 1.1 seconds off back in 9th spot on the pylon today. By the way, Thomas Anthony amongst the part-timers that have competed the past 3 rounds. So, we'll see if they wave the checkered here or if they keep it going. This is going to be close on time. Yes, it's going to be an hour time, in fact. Believe for Thomas Anthony. Still in the 47-second bracket. That is blazing quick for him. Everybody else still in the 48s. Carson Benjamin just jumped up to 3rd, as expecting to checker this upcoming time by for the racetrack. In fact, Parker Dunn already the first to see the checker to his qualifying.
And you kind of touched on it earlier as well, Justin. You asked if, drivers coming in and racing a part-time schedule and only certain events really affects your mindset at all. I don't think it does. I think it's pretty natural that some of these drivers only go to the regional events that are close to them, and they're not going to every single event on the circuit. And I think it's just more the adjustment that these drivers have to do. And as I kind of touched on earlier, that's the fun part of being a driver, is figuring out different things with your car, figuring how the track interacts with the car, and just trying to make adjustments from there and improve.
Checker flag on the racetrack. Anthony, Laser, and Payne all stay in place. Carson Benjamin and Isaiah Maxey, your top 5. Mason Ward, Evan Patton, Colin Harden, Parker Dunn, Nico Santos are amongst your top 10 today. The rest of your drivers, Reagan Harper and Liam Codd, are on the second grouping of drivers for today. They'll start the tail for the heat today. So 206 junior qualifying coming to a close. Our next group is already eager and ready to go. It's 206 Masters. And this season, it's been a dominant performance from 2 different drivers who we talked about earlier, Ian. Matt Geist, Troy Toney. They're 1 and 2 in these point standings. 2,123 points for Geist, 2,038 for Troy Toney. Toney got the upper hand in the last feature race. The last heat race was Matt Geist. However, Matt just about dominated the first half of the season. It's changed around this second half. We'll see how they qualify for this first race of the penultimate weekend.
And you already touched on it. They kind of had maybe an appetizer to their battle here this evening in these karts. And I mean, it's good to have competition. You mentioned that, what is racing across different categories, different classes do for you. It's good to race the same competition as well. You get used to the drivers out there. It gets to be, I would say predictable, but predictable in a good way. What I mean by that is when you make a move on somebody, you're confident that they're going to give you the space, or that if you go in there, they're going to hold that line and not really care if you're there or not. So it allows you to race more effectively as a driver when you kind of have that expectation of what the other drivers on the track are going to do. And it's also fun to just carry that competition through multiple classes. And I expect Matt Geist and Troy Toney to do that here as well. And we'll see how it goes as far as qualifying goes right now. Melvin Godsey on the top of the board right now. This is just your first lap, though, so Tyre's still getting up to heat.
Yeah, expecting that to change there. Godsey has made the podium a couple times this season. Also in the field, J. Brian Williams, who missed a couple rounds. That put him back in the point standings, a sizable margin. BJ Snetler, Tim Landon, amongst those that currently have the active transponder codes you see on screen. So, 3 minutes to work with here. Let's see if Geist can improve upon things. Better yet, anybody. Well, there it is. Godsey jumps top of the board. Williams to second. And somebody, we'll see who in a moment, is in third.
I kind of like the unknown mystery driver. They should just like wait till the end of the session and be like, it was this person the whole time that set the third fastest lap time. But I don't think that's what we're gonna do. As someone who helps run a racetrack as well, I also know the fun of dealing with transponders, and they're a little bit finicky sometimes. So I'm assuming once this session's over and we get back in, we'll figure out who those drivers are right now. But yes, so far a mysterious mystery driver has a 48.8.
See if that changes here in a moment. 2 minutes to work with. Gonsi, Williams amongst the front runners still, as this time around, Tony and Matt Geist both jump around to second and third on the pylon. J. Brian Williams gets shuffled back there as a result of the squabbling. Still, enough time for 2-3 more laps here on the racetrack.
Yeah, and you can see these two cars right here, the 24 of Tony. Tony and Geist, it's kind of ironic. They were fighting each other earlier in the race, but right now really working together, a real team effort here in qualifying, trying to push both one another here to try to see if they can do anything to try to rival the dominance so far that has been Melvin Godsey in this qualifying session. Still got about a minute and 30 seconds, minute and 15 seconds to do that now. We'll see if anything changes when they cross the stripe this time.
Well, what changes is Matt Geist gets all the way down to fourth. Tony jumps him to third. J. Brian Williams jumps all the way to the top for now. So a lot of swapping and changing. It might be a flip of the hat, so to speak, to see really who gets the top spot here. These two you see on screen have remained relatively let's work together-ish throughout this session.
Well, you can see too, it's the top four again, so it's one of those situations where you could take probably those top four drivers, put their name in a hat and pull it out, and that's your pole sitter. Again, it's just when you're this close, it's the smallest of little details that are going to make the difference, and sometimes it's a detail that's not even in your control at all. So really, I would say any one of these top four drivers, top five drivers even, has a really good chance of putting themselves in a really good spot once the heat race starts, and they're all going to be competitive.
Should see the checker flag for the session coming up here. One of those transponders, by the way, Michael Schaefer, it looks like, is the result of the transponder in sixth spot. But what we'll see in a moment, the result for this session, will we see a change here for the master class? Running in the 48.3s for the fastest laps. 3 are now in the main pack. Who is going to get the upper hand here for this qualifying session? Checker flag. At the end, it is Williams, who stays up at the top with his best run of the session. Godsey, Tony, Geist, your top four. Mystery driver in the fifth spot right now. Geist did not improve there, you've seen. Michael Schaefer, Tim Landon, BJ Snetler round out the entries for 206 Masters today. Your thoughts on the qualifying, Ian?
I was just about to say, I think that's really important for J. Brian Williams as well, because he's the only driver that set his fastest time late in that qualifying session. His last lap actually was his fastest lap of a 47.9, which makes him the only driver actually to break into that 47-second bracket. And if you get hot late in a run, I think it really bodes well for you going into the heat race as well, because it means once your kart gets a little bit of heat in the tires, once it gets going, that's going to bode well for you. So you're going to carry some of the heat, some of the wear from the qualifying session, move into the heat. You're only going to have 5 minutes there, but especially into the final as well. Put yourself in a good spot. I think it bodes well for his kart in the long run.
So just waiting for some of the air karts, it looks like, to make their way off the racetrack after some issues at the end of the session. That's our current delay here before the next group gets the clearing to hit the track for their session. Again, you're watching the Indy Karting Challenge. Again, in a few minutes after this grouping goes and completes the qualifying session for KA Senior and Masters, go behind the paywall for the heats and the final today. Again, the heats, 5 minutes plus 2 laps. The finals, 8 minutes plus 2 laps for today. Our final qualifying group now hits the racetrack. And let's talk about these two groups, two different championships in this qualifying session. Lane Gibbs leading the way for the championship point standings. Yet to get a win this season, but has been relatively consistent. Keeping close despite missing a race, AJ Lund, who's won a couple times, 3 times total, 2 heats and a feature last time out, in fact. That's got him within spitting distance, 1,809 to 1,772 for the points. Gibbs to Lund. Also in the conversation within about 200, Casey Perry is yet to get in front, but has showed relatively decent consistency as of late. So, KA Senior looks like that, but you also have KA Masters, where it's Soa Nelson, who's made every round, leading that championship in relatively strong fashion. We have a lot of fast drivers to keep an eye on, including one of the part-timers for the KA Senior today, Gusto Soto Sharipa, has made the field for today, and he's already top of the board. Keep an eye on that 906 card. He's one of the drivers who races a lot across the region.
Yeah, and definitely come out here on a part-time basis and immediately go to the top of the leaderboard. Sets just the tiniest of statement to the other drivers. We'll see if he can keep it up throughout the session or if anybody else leapfrogs him for that pole position. And I really enjoy these classes here too, where it's 2 classes basically in one, and it really puts a dynamic in here where you're fighting for 2 different races at the same time, the overall win, and then also you're fighting for your points in your position as well, as we see Elijah Fox now go to the top of the leaderboard. I really like the dynamic it puts into the racing, and it really makes it interesting when you get a battle for, like, let's say 2 cars are battling for the lead in one class and there's a 6th place car in the middle of both of them. I think it really leads to some interesting racing decisions. Sometimes it doesn't go well, sometimes it does, but it's always fun to watch.
Still 2.5 minutes to work with for this session. Fox, Lund, Soto Sharipa, the USF Junior. Rounding out the top 3, Gibbs down in 4th for this session. This time around, we'll see if there's a change. Looks like the answer is Elijah Fox, 41.798. Stays top of the board, but a move up from Hudson Potter and Blake Finley get themselves to in the top 5 and edge of the top 5 respectively.
And I think we're going to just continue to see the positions shuffle around here until the very last lap, especially as we saw earlier. Some of these drivers have their kart set up so their speed comes later in a run. So I'm interested to see as the session goes on how much more these positions will jostle. And I really don't see too much drafting out there. I know we're watching for that, kind of seeing the differences between the different classes. I know we're touching on that a lot, but it's kind of one of the key points we're looking on here to see how much these drivers are using the draft or how much they're using the cornering speed. Really, I'm seeing actually a lot more speed being carried through the corners in these karts than we saw in some of our earlier classes, Justin.
Yeah, these are your fastest on property when it comes to the speeds today. 41-second lap times, again being turned. Still a minute to work with for this session. So, keeping an eye on this grouping. That includes, I believe, Augusto Soto Sharipa amongst this grouping here. Let's see what the times look like this time. Again, no change. It looks like they may have set their fastest lap times here unless they can get something built up here. AJ Lund, I should say, is the one on the chase and is trying to use the kart in front as a drafting pick.
As we say that too, Elijah Fox in the last lap just set his fastest time of the session, still sitting on pole. You see the 41.7 there. But again, we've talked about it all day long. Look at the closeness in these lap times. 1st through 8th within a second, 1st through 5th within half of a second. So again, really, this qualifying effort is so vital because you're going to be so close to each other on the racetrack. Helps you get out to that early lead. And we've seen it all day long how important the starts have been in these heat races and in these features. The leader who's able to get clear of the pack really gets themselves out to an early advantage.
And it looks like some of the karts already coming on in as the checker flag now waves for the session. Let's see where the times end up falling for some of these drivers. Again, Fox, Lund, Soto, Sharipa, how they're currently sorted. Back half of the grouping crossing the stripe, including those at the edge of your top 10, like Michael Gundolf, have already completed their qualifying runs. The others are on the other side of the racetrack here, about to finish up said runs here. Lane Gibbs stays in fourth spot for the session. Any others change arounds? Blake Finley does improve. Casey Perry 7th. Fox and Lund, believe, are the last that did not set times yet. They stay stagnant too. So Fox, Lund, Soto Sharipa, Gibbs, Potter, Finley, Casey Perry, Riker Matz, along with Rudder and Gundolf. Rounding out the top 10 for this qualifying session. Rounding out the field towards the tail end, you have Gallion, Simon Ellick. Also in the field today, Nelson and Flynn for their respective class finish towards the tail in the session. So, a few more minutes until we go racing here. Due up in about at least 5 minutes from now is 206 Sportsman Heat Racing. Coming up, take a quick step aside. Kart Chaser has more after this.